Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard. I'm Loren Feldman, and as usual, I'm here with Gene Marks to talk about the stories and issues we think business owners should be following this week. Great to have you here, Gene.
Great to speak with you, Loren. How are you?
I'm doing great, and you?
I am doing good so far.
Excellent. We'll see what we can do about that. Let's start with one that tends to freak people out, and that's inflation. It just hit a 4-decade high, we found out. People do tend to freak out about it, but you've told us in the past, I've asked you about this over the months, and you've kind of told us to stay calm. Is it time to panic now?
No, I mean, it's never time to panic. I mean, good people that are running good businesses never panic. They just, make sure that they're keeping an eye on things and then making their adjustments as it is,
Sure.
So listen, I mean, we're having this conversation today on a Monday, and on June 14th, tomorrow, there will be a release of the producer price index for May. The consumer price index, which came out last week, that's all in the past. The PPI is what's going to show us what's coming up in the future. And last month it was 11.3%. I think it will be even higher this month. That's a leading indicator of continued inflation. And I actually think the PPI is a bit understated for a lot of industries. A lot of my clients and people I speak to, a lot of their core materials have risen even higher than 11.3%. So I guess, no, there's no reason to panic, but, we need to accept the fact that we are in an inflationary period that's going to be going on easily for the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm hoping to see the PPI level out at some point, and that will give us an indication that, inflation is finally hitting a max and maybe coming down. But we need to prepare and make sure that we're managing our businesses around higher prices.
It's kind of an awkward moment in the sense that we have been told that inflation is something of a side effect, the result of the growth that followed the lockdowns and the government money that was injected into the economy. But now we've got the inflation going even higher, and a potential recession looming, we keep hearing, which is not a great combination.
Right.
You've told me in the past that quite a few of your clients are seeing something of a slowing in their businesses and are starting to prepare. Has anything changed with that?
No, still the same. As we're heading now into the summer, they're looking at a slowdown this fall. And into 2023. And I think we'll see that across the board. I don't think no one I'm talking to is seeing a collapse, or something to the extent of 2009, type of Great Recession, but definitely a slowdown is on the way. It's being exacerbated by, obviously inflation is a big issue, and the high price of oil as well, because that filters down into so many products that we have. The next big thing we need to remember, smart business owners always looking ahead. The next big thing that's going to happen is we're all going to be seeing much higher interest rates. The Fed has already announced they're going to be having increases, and that's going to have.
But we're already seeing some of those, right?
Already, yeah. I mean, mortgage rates are now like 5 to 6%, and business rates themselves are coming up at that level as well. And we're the only way, the strongest tool that the Fed has to try and tamper down the acceleration of money into the system is by making money cost more. And the way they do that is they raise interest rates. So the cost of financing goes up, the cost of capital goes up. It becomes more difficult to get capital for your business. If you're a startup, we're seeing that in the tech industry right now. Tens of thousands of layoffs in Silicon Valley because a lot of these tech companies, we've had, a decade of easy money. And now a lot of the tech companies are hearing from their venture capitalists and investors that spigot is now being turned off because it's becoming more expensive or unavailable. So you got to make do with what you got. So that's going to be the next story in the next 6 months will be how businesses are dealing with the higher cost of capital. And that's something we haven't been having to do.
As best I can tell, so far, most of those layoffs have been confined to the tech industry, startups, as you said, for now. Have you seen that spread at all? Any of your clients thinking about it?
Not yet. In fact, it's interesting that you say that. So I know for a fact that once we start seeing a slowdown and the media starts covering, a slowdown, the larger companies, the big brands, they'll jump on that news and they're gonna have layoffs. They couldn't lay off any of their dead weight during the pandemic because that would be like a PR disaster, right? But listen.
Well, that's always been the case in a recession, but maybe not this time, just because maybe there isn't as much dead weight since everybody's been struggling so much to hire. Is that possible?
Now, listen, I work with a lot of corporate clients, Loren. There's a lot of dead weight. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of people out there that I know ain't working 40-hour weeks, So I do think it's an opportunity for businesses, because if there's one thing I've seen is that small businesses are still looking for people. And, again, my smartest clients, they're looking beyond the slowdown. And, our biggest issue is finding talent. And, if somebody gets laid off in a corporate downsizing, might be the kind of talent that we can acquire if we've got the ability to do that. To position ourselves for the future. And I think we should all be on the lookout for that, because I think that is something that could very well be an opportunity for us.
All right, next topic. I've been reading a lot of stories lately about retailers, mostly to some extent manufacturers too, but especially retailers dealing with inventory issues. Target and Walmart in particular got stuck with a lot of product that they're having trouble unloading. I think they guessed wrong on some things. Plus, the economy coming out of the pandemic changed a little more quickly than I think they expected, and people started going to stores faster than they expected. So they're stuck with a lot of stuff they're trying to unload. You also have manufacturers dealing with supply chain issues that just go on and on. There's an interesting story in the New York Times last week about Ford, kind of speculating what would Henry Ford do if he were running Ford, given that he was always trying to produce all of his own materials. There was speculation in the story about whether he would be building his own computer chip factories. Although they mentioned, did you know this? The F-150 pickup uses more than 800 types of computer chips.
I did not know that.
That's kind of unbelievable to me. So most of these stories have focused on big businesses. I'm curious, are you seeing these inventory management issues with smaller businesses?
It's even worse for smaller businesses. Because the whole narrative of inventory has changed because of the whole supply chain thing. And by the way, Loren, did you even know what the supply chain was like 2 years ago? Like, nobody knew it, never used those words. Now,
well, you knew the phrase, you'd heard it, but it's certainly not something we were focusing on.
Yeah, everything is supply chain this, supply chain this. Like, I've never heard this phrase used more in my life than supply. You know what I mean? Isn't there like a shortage of sriracha sauce? Did you read that?
Absolutely.
It's a shortage of peppers. They're not growing.
That's a big deal for a lot of people.
It's a big issue. Supply chain. Anyway, that supply chain issue is hitting a lot of smaller businesses as well, because they have to wait in line behind the Targets of the world, because they get their goods first, And it is kind of funny because, it was the Targets and the Amazons and some of these other big box retailers and Walmart. There were lots of stories earlier on this year about them bullying their way to get first dibs on a lot of these, a lot of stuff coming over from China, hiring their own boats and their own planes and all that stuff. Now they're stuck with a bunch of inventory. Boo-hoo, But, for manufacturers, and smaller job shops and distributors, the narrative has changed from just in time to just in case. So if you're making something, people are buying in bulk and they're hoarding materials because they don't know when they're going to be able to get them again right now. It's still difficult because of all the supply chain issues out there. So I am seeing a lot of purchases of inventory being made by a lot of my clients. And that's a cash flow, commitment.
Right. There's some risk to that it costs a lot of money. You got to store the stuff and things can go wrong. You might possibly buy the wrong stuff.
You're right. Usually it's not, these are companies, again, most of my client base are B2B. So they're making the same stuff, for their end customers. It's not like they have to guess on trends, or.
Well, that New York Times story talking about computer chips and the F-150, it said that computer chips have a shelf life. And I didn't know that. It makes me wonder if there are other things out there that have an expiration date that I would not have guessed.
Certainly are. I mean, obviously, things that go bad. And in computer chips, I think what they mean by the shelf, I don't know if they actually deteriorate themselves or if they just become less out of date, like the Moore's Law thing, like you buy a chip and then 6 months later, there's like a better chip that became available. Do you know what I mean?
That could be.
So that's something that the industry is facing. But the business themselves are buying this inventory. The reason why they're doing it. We were just saying like it's costly because to invest in inventory, you tie up all of your working capital and that stuff. But for a lot of my clients, they look at it and they say, it's more costly if we don't buy, because if we can buy something for $1.25, a pound now, and we know it's going to be $1.45 6 months from now, it behooves us to buy it at $1.25, even now while interest rates are still relatively low, because we know those are going up this year as well for the financing to do that. A lot of people are they're trying to buy stuff in advance and, in bulk, assuming they have the capital available to do that. One thing about recessions, I have to tell you, Loren, is that if you have cash, you can really profit. It's an opportunity to buy stuff because people are trying to unload it or buy stuff for the future or make investments.
I know some smart businesses that try to set aside cash precisely for that reason.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I've had some business owners they hoard their cash during good times. I'm like, why don't you invest in this or invest in that? They're like, no, we're waiting for the deals. And the deals usually come in a downturn. So inventory buys is something that, if you're a B2B, kind of business, is what I'm seeing among my clients. They're buying right now where they can. Because like I said earlier, they know that the cost of not buying is going to be more if they wait, and they'd rather just have it and spend the money now and have it in-house.
All right. Next, Bloomberg had a recent story, and I know you've written about this in the past. The IRS is now going to know about any payments you receive through Venmo or other digital payment services. Until this year, I think anyone with less than $20,000 in total payments didn't have to worry about the IRS being alerted, but now the IRS is getting a 1099-K, I believe. That means, I guess, you got to pay your taxes, but it also is some bureaucratic lifting that has to be done. How big a problem is that?
I think there's an unreported problem to this, which I wrote about earlier as well, because I think that there's going to be another side issue. And by the way, so if you're listening to this and you're not completely familiar, if you're using PayPal, Venmo, I forget what Wells Fargo, their Cash App, Zelle, any of these cash apps before, right? They now have a requirement that if they have a total of more than $600 in transactions going from a specific business, they got to send a 1099 to that business. Like, hey, you used Venmo this year for $10,000 in purchases you received from us. So we're sending you a 1099 for that 10,000. We're also sending.
They're also sending it to the IRS.
The IRS, exactly right. We're reporting that. So a lot of businesses, they monkey around with their cash receipts. Maybe they don't report it. Maybe maybe they do. But it's going to be this extra 1099 that you're getting that you're not going to really quite sure what to do with it. So you have to file it away and make sure that whatever Venmo is saying that they got on your behalf is somewhere reflected on your books. Because the IRS might find out about it. All I hear about, by the way, is the IRS being so understaffed and underfunded. I have no idea how they're even going to be dealing with this, whole bureaucracy as well. So that's another. I'll tell you the big issue that you should be aware about if you're a business owner, though. But watch out. A lot of these services have incomplete information about you. They might not have your W-9 information, your EIN, your Social Security, whatever it is. So, or your address. So they're going to be reaching out to you to complete that information so they can do these forms. And that's going to start happening in the second half of the year, which we're approaching. And there's going to be a lot of nefarious people out there as well. A lot of hackers that are going to be sending you emails, pretending to be from PayPal, asking you for information. And because you've gotten these requests maybe from somewhere else, you're like, oh, well, I guess PayPal needs this too. Be careful, because you might be sharing, your very confidential personal business information, not with PayPal, but with somebody else.
That's such a great point.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of that.
Typically, it would not come from PayPal, right? It would come from your client.
Yeah, you have to be smart enough to know that the email that's coming is not a PayPal address. You know what I mean?
But I mean, it's not even, you wouldn't even expect it to come from PayPal. They're not the ones that would solicit that information. It's the vendor, the person that the client.
Well, no, in this case, PayPal now, because of this new rule, PayPal has got to report on transactions to you.
Oh,
do you know
okay,
what I mean?
I'm confused.
So you are going to be, and again, PayPal might not have all of your information to do that. So yeah, you would be getting it.
It would come from, okay.
And then the other thing also to bear in mind is that just like talk about security, because I do like some, this tech stuff. If people are moving around, you get this request. Say you get a legit request from PayPal asking you for your EIN or your social security numbers. They can do this. For God's sake, don't respond to this from a Starbucks or from an airport. You know what I mean? Or if you're going to do that, make sure you have a VPN on your device, because now you're giving all this super confidential information over like a public router that can easily be hacked unless you encrypt it. So I just think we really have to be very aware of this, because this very confidential information is going to be requested of us over the next few months. So be aware.
Do you have a sense of how widespread this issue is? I mean, where do we stand in terms of the adoption of cash apps? I mean, obviously, it's hugely important to businesses that are selling on eBay or Etsy or Amazon, wherever. But just in general, do you know where we stand with that?
Yeah, I don't have like the data as to how many people use these cash apps for their businesses, but I see it all over the place. I mean, geez, the guy on the beach, is selling his $10 ice cream sandwiches, and he's accepting, money from.
He's got a monopoly, Gene.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, I paid him. I grudgingly paid him on Venmo, and I hope that guy gets stuck with a big $10.99 at the end of the year. But all these guys, there's a lot of artisans and craftspeople. There's a lot of nonprofits as well that have to report these things. So, these are, so there are a lot of organizations that use these cash apps, a growing number of organizations, not necessarily just people that are online. So it will have that impact. A lot of freelancers, independent contractors doing work.
Sure. All right. Last topic. One of my goals for this year, Gene, has been to learn as little as possible, read as little as possible, think as little as possible about the metaverse. But every now and then I feel like I just have to check in. And you just did a podcast in which you kind of asked the question, what does this mean for small business owners? And I guess my question to you is, so far, I've been assuming the answer is nothing. Have we gotten to the point where it actually means something to business owners?
Not yet, but I could tell you what's coming down the road. Okay.
Okay.
Here's what's going to come down the road. First of all, Apple and other device makers are going to be coming out soon, within the next year or two, with much better looking and usable glasses, not these stupid Google Glass, monstrosities, but real life looking glasses that you can put on that weigh the same. They're going to get better and better and better, where you can just switch into a virtual world while you're wearing these glasses just by giving it a command. So that gives you instant access into a visual world. And then you're looking through your glasses and you're in a virtual world. So what does that mean? Well, Loren, if you're running it, say me, the Marks Group, okay, my business. Well, I am going to have clients, including younger clients, they're going to want to have like meetings with me to talk about a CRM product, and they're going to be like, well, we'd like to meet in your virtual office because that's how we do business. And I need to have space in the metaverse, in this, like real estate online in this virtual world, so that I can meet with this client, because that's what the client wants to do. And by the way, that client right now is in 7th grade. I mean, it's a generational thing, right? No, I'm 57.
What? They're teaching CRM in 7th grade, huh?
Well, no 57-year-old guy is going to be like, oh, I need to meet you in a virtual world. You know what I mean? Like, it's a generational thing, right? The same generation that drove the original internet and drove mobile devices. Do you know what I mean? That's how it's happening. So they're going to say, like, listen, we want to meet. We assume you have a virtual space, so let's meet there. Why? Because it's way more cooler and interactive. So then I have to rent a room or own a room in some virtual place. And by the way, it can't be some shithole. It's got to be like, in a nice building that's a professional environment. Like, oh, you have space in that part of the virtual world. That's a very nice place. It's a high end space. You must be, doing the right thing.
Why are there low-end spaces in a virtual world?
We'll wait and see. Because there's wherever you rent space to run 21 hats, that'll be the low end. You understand? And then it'll
Understood.
be so then we're gonna have space. Great, we're gonna meet there, and then I'll have my avatar, which will look a lot better than it ever. Well, it's me, so it's not gonna look that much better, but it'll look a lot more realistic than any of the avatars right now. So like, I have this meeting. We're looking around. We're looking at each other, and it literally is because we're looking through these glasses. Like we're right across from each other and having this meeting. Now, by the way, we're going to have it in a room, and in the room it's going to be.
Why is that better than Zoom?
Oh, because it's more in what's the word for it that I'm looking for? Zoom. It's like I'm looking at a screen and I'm looking around, my room and I can lower Zoom and go and browse something else and whatever. Whereas in the metaverse, you're immersed in that room as if you were there in real life. Do you know what I mean? So, and the person's right in front of you and there's other people around you. If you're having a meeting with multiple people, it's way more closer to real life than what like a Zoom screen is on your device. You're in this room and, you got to sit on a virtual chair and you're going to have a virtual desk in front of you because you'll have virtual documents. You have to buy that from somebody. Somebody's going to sell you that virtual piece of furniture and that virtual chair. And oh, by the way, you've got a room there and you want to impress your prospective client. So you want to have like nice digital art on the walls. Well, you have to buy that as well. And oh, by the way, you certainly want to be naked. I certainly want, trust me, no one, right? You don't want to be naked when you're sitting in that room. So you're going to have to buy virtual clothes so you look good and you can't just be wearing a pair of jeans. God forbid you're in a business environment. You need to buy professional attire, which costs a little bit. You see where I'm going with
I wear jeans in an actual business environment.
Yeah. I mean, do you see where I'm going with this? Like, it's this whole world that's being created as we're speaking right now. And just like the internet, there's a whole new generation they're already there because they're playing games like Halo, on it. They want to be there because it's fun and it's different and it's immersive and it can be creative and it's going to generate a giant new economy, like a $30 billion economy, according to some estimates right now within the next 10 years. So that's not only something that we as business owners, I promise you, Loren, you will have an address for 21 hats somewhere in a virtual environment in the next decade. And I promise you, you're going to have to buy all the virtual shit that you're going to have to buy to have a presence in the metaverse.
Will you promise to wake me up when it's time?
You'll know about it. It's the same thing as having a website. And then, it's the same thing. We got a video on our website. And, we got to have a blog on our website. We gotta. You know what I mean? That's what's going to happen.
I hear you. But I'm going to go back to ignoring it for now and trust that you'll let me know. Gene Marks is a CPA who writes weekly on small business for The Guardian, The Hill, The Philadelphia Inquirer, The Washington Times, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. You can also hear him on ABC Radio's Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Gene hosts 2 small business podcasts with Paychex Corporation and The Hartford. Thank you, Gene, as always.
Thank you, Loren. Yeah, we'll see you next week, right?
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Have a great week, everyone.